I left 2 boyfriends back home thinking that's the last thing I'm going to meet up with a boy.
The lights dimmed inside the studio, and the world seemed to stop breathing. The cameras stopped their casual drifting, the audience leaned forward, and the air turned electric. Because sitting in that chair, with that unmistakable smile and the glow of a woman who has lived 1,000 lives, was Dolly Parton, the queen of country music, the icon of Nashville, and the woman whose charm has crossed oceans and generations. But on this day, at 79 years old, Dolly Parton wasn't there to talk about business or charity or even her music. She was about to tell a truth she'd held close for decades, a truth no stage, no album, no spotlight had ever captured. The interview began the way most interviews with Dolly Parton do, light, warm, filled with stories of her early days in the Great Smoky Mountains, her journey through Nashville, her success with albums, tours, and her beloved theme park Dollywood. But then the host leaned in, eyes gleaming with curiosity, and asked the question every legend eventually faces. At your age, with everything you've achieved, is there anything you wish you'd done differently? Any paths you still think about at night? It was a harmless question, or so it seemed. But something in Dolly's expression shifted. Her eyes sparkled, not with humor this time, but with a kind of daring honesty no one expected. She tilted her head in that signature Dolly way and whispered, "Honey, there are 7 roads I took that nobody knows about. 7 men who saw a side of me the world never did." The room froze. Technicians stopped moving. Even the air felt still, because Dolly Parton was not teasing. She was confessing, fully, fearlessly, finally. She took a slow breath, then said the first name, Kenny Rogers. The moment she said it, the room vibrated. The chemistry between Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers had been legendary for decades. Fans had analyzed every smile, every duet, every moment they shared on stage. But here, at last, was the truth. Their connection had been deeper, stronger, more intimate than the world ever knew. She described nights in Las Vegas, long recording sessions, and the way Kenny's voice wrapped around her soul like velvet. Their duets weren't just music. They were conversations between 2 hearts that understood each other completely. Then she said the second name, Kris Kristofferson. Her smile grew softer, almost nostalgic. Kris Kristofferson was more than a songwriter, more than an actor, more than a legend. To Dolly, he was fire and poetry braided together. A man whose intensity could light up a room and whose passion could silence it. She described him as lightning, brilliant, dangerous, irresistible. Their time together was brief, but it burned itself into her memory with a force that still made her voice tremble. With Kris, she said, everything felt alive. The music, the conversations, the nights filled with candlelight and confessions. The third name carried the weight of history. Porter Wagoner. If the studio had been silent before, it became absolutely still now. The relationship between Dolly Parton and Porter Wagoner had shaped the early years of her career. On The Porter Wagoner Show, the popular television program that introduced her to millions of Americans, their partnership had been complicated, passionate, and turbulent, filled with professional battles, lawsuits, and creative disagreements. But now Dolly peeled back the final layer. Behind the rhinestone suits and bright stage lights, she said, their connection had been more than professional. Porter Wagoner was the first man who saw the full force of her talent and ambition. He opened doors for her, pushed her, challenged her, and in private, shared moments of passion neither of them were ready to admit to the world. Their relationship was tangled with power, desire, ambition, and emotion, the kind of bond that builds legends but breaks hearts. The fourth name brought a softer light to her eyes, Glenn Campbell. With Glenn Campbell, she said, life felt easy, free, filled with sunshine and laughter. After the emotional storms with Porter and the intensity of Kris, Glenn was a breath of fresh air, a man whose talent was effortless and whose charm was undeniable. Their moments together, in hotel rooms, on tour stops, in small pockets of time between their busy careers, were like stolen chapters in a story that didn't belong to the world. He would strum his guitar quietly while she sang beside him, and somehow, those gentle harmonies always drifted into something deeper and more intimate. To Dolly, Glenn Campbell was a moment of peace in a life filled with pressure and expectation. Then she laughed, a mischievous, knowing laugh, and spoke the fifth name, Waylon Jennings. The room practically crackled when she said it. Waylon Jennings, the outlaw of Nashville, the man who played by no one's rules but his own. With Waylon, there were no candlelit poems, no delicate serenades, no slow-burning emotional reflections. He was intensity. He was danger. He was a storm that swept you up before you could catch your breath. Dolly said that being with Waylon felt like stepping into chaos, thrilling, unpredictable, unforgettable. He didn't seduce with words. He seduced with presence, with a voice that growled promises and hands that knew exactly what they wanted. The sixth name brought a sweetness back into her voice, Willie Nelson. Of all the names she mentioned, Willie Nelson was the gentlest, the warmest, the most tender. She described him as a man whose soul felt ancient, wise, soft, and endlessly compassionate. With Willie, she said, love wasn't rushed or loud. It was quiet, gentle, like a familiar melody drifting through the air. He treated her with a tenderness that made her feel cherished, understood, and safe. Their connection grew from friendship, long talks, shared songs, moments on the road, into something deeper, something intimate, something that existed only in the spaces where fame couldn't reach. And then came the seventh name, the name that changed the temperature of the entire room, Johnny Cash. The moment she said it, the air felt heavy, not with scandal, but with gravity. Johnny Cash, the man in black, the icon whose voice carried storms, whose life was a battlefield of music, addiction, love, and redemption. Dolly spoke of him with a reverence that bordered on awe. Being close to Johnny, she said, was like standing on the edge of a cliff, thrilling, terrifying, irresistible. His presence filled every room. His voice could turn confession into seduction, and his eyes, those dark, soul-deep eyes, could see into places she never showed to the public. Their moments together were rare, secret, and explosive, shaped by passion and shadowed by his complicated love for June Carter. With Johnny Cash, nothing was simple, nothing was safe, and nothing was ever forgotten. When she finished, the silence was overwhelming. 7 names, 7 legends, 7 truths that reshaped everything the world thought it knew about Dolly Parton. But she wasn't done. She leaned forward, voice soft but fierce, and said, these weren't scandals. They were sacred. She explained that every connection meant something deeper. Every relationship taught her something powerful. Kenny taught her connection. Chris taught her passion. Porter taught her strength. Glenn taught her joy. Waylon taught her wildness. Willie taught her tenderness. Johnny taught her depth. 7 men, 7 chapters, 7 secrets carried by a woman the world thought it already understood. In the end, Dolly Parton's truth reminds us that legends aren't defined by perfection. They're defined by courage, passion, and the stories they finally choose to share. 7 men shaped her journey, but her strength shaped her destiny. And now that her secrets have stepped into the light, the world loves her even more for it. If this story moved you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful untold stories, because some truths deserve to be heard, and this is only the beginning. Thanks for watching.